Okay, I think we're ready. Let's stand and we'll sing one more time. Christos. Christ is risen. Please be seated. I have to tell you a cute story to begin with. This year, I don't know, I've got to figure out a way to do things different when I tell my spiritual children a dandelion date is in the confession because they all wait for that date. And then I get a flood of confessions in. And so this year, I also had the honor to serve at the St. Franciscan Monastery in Washington, Texas, for the Saturday Blasphemous through Holy Thursday mornings liturgy. So needless to say, I didn't have much time to do the talk. So before I left for Washington, Texas, I called the artist and I said, "Artist, we've got to cancel the retreat." She said, "No." She said, "The Mother of God will take care of it." Well, I can vouch for the fact that she's right. But everything came together very quickly in the last couple of days. So you're getting worse than a dress rehearsal this time. So anyway, but I thank you, Lisa, for giving me the encouragement to reach out to the Mother of God. And I'll tell you, we'll see that later. Thursday evening and this morning, we experienced the great spiritual joy. And of course, that joy was multiplied this year because it was an ordination. So when you have a hierarchical liturgy, Father Demetrios and I were talking about that. All liturgies are magnificent, but when you bring in a hierarchical liturgy, and on top of that you have an ordination, I hope you all experienced some of the taste of the joy that was there today and the power of the Holy Liturgy. It was remarkable. And, it's been my honor here. I think this monastery's been here 22 years, and 21 out of the 22, thanks to Yeronis, I've been able to come and give talks. But going through now, this is now talk number 10 on the Mother of God, it finally came to me that, hey, you've never talked about the life-giving spring. I mean, here you are, you've been doing retreats here, and you never said anything about that. So we're going to begin our fourth retreat on the Mother of God by a brief look at this holy icon's unique history. Then we're going to look at a very popular miracle-working icon of Panagia, who resides in the United States in an old calendar church. And of course, you know the guardian, Demetrios, the environed icon of the Theotokos. And these icons, I said who resides. I didn't say that or which. Because Panagia is truly alive in this icon. How many of you here have seen that icon? I guess everybody has, right? I remember the first time I saw it, it was just a remarkable thing to go before an icon that was fragrant and pouring out myrrh. It was overwhelming to see something like that. And I use the pronoun because Panagia is truly alive in that icon. She's placed a living presence of herself. And that living presence is in all of her miracle-working icons. And here's this. May kind of you blessed what I'm about to tell you. I deeply believe within my heart, if someone really loves the Mother of God, then one of their icons of her is going to have her in it too. It's going to be a real presence of the Panagia. And may that real presence also come in that person's heart and our hearts as well. Tomorrow morning, God willing, we're going to spend the entire talk on a subject that we really need more than ever, the holy protection of the Mother of God. Something that you and I are blessed to receive every second of every day. And we'll also describe that icon and the reality of Panagia's presence. In fact, we got to give thanks, and we'll see it later, and I'll say this again, we got to give thanks to the Russians, because they're the ones that started the feast day for the Iaskevi, not the Greeks. They set it up for October 1st. And each of you are going to get a nice copy of those two icons today, and before you leave here, you're going to have 7 icons. And you're going to have something very special that you're going to get tonight. So let's start with the life-giving spring icon of the Theotokos. I want to begin by sharing the kondakion and the ikos for this feast day. Here's the kondakion. From thine unfailing fount, O maid, most graced of God, thou didst reward me by the flow of unending streams of thy grace that just pass human understanding. Notice that the kondakion is a very personal thing. It said me. I've been awarded that grace. And since thou didst bear the word, the capital W of course, incomprehensibly, I entreat thee to refresh me with thy divine grace, so that I may cry to thee, rejoice, O water of salvation. And then the ikos, very beautiful. All spotless Theotokos, who ineffably gave birth to the Father's pre-eternal Logos. Forget your reasoning. You're not going to understand what I just said. But if your heart is open, you're going to experience it. Noble lady, open wide my mouth and assist me as I now commence praising thee, so that I may cry out to thee, extolling your spring and saying, rejoice, O spring of unceasing joyfulness. Rejoice, O stream of ineffable beauty. Rejoice, banishment of every malady. Rejoice, elimination of diverse impairments. Not just removal, but elimination. Rejoice, brook of clarity, curing the believing. Rejoice, water of contentment, giving multiple healings to those who are sick. Rejoice, fluid of wisdom, removing ignorance. By the way, that's one of the 3 mothers of all the passions. Before something like lust or anger or bitterness or jealousy can hit us, we have to want one of those 3 mothers active, and the other 2 are forgetfulness and laziness. So those are the 3 things as Orthodox Christians we should constantly be fighting: forgetfulness, laziness, and ignorance. Rejoice, drink for the heart, pouring forth ambrosia. And this is orthodoxy, my brothers and sisters, and maybe, if God so wills, we'll talk about this after church on Sunday. There seems to be an overemphasis in my cynical mind of trying to get people to understand things, when the whole key to orthodoxy is not understanding, it's experiencing. That's why churches were filled at the beginning of the 20th century, even though they couldn't understand the Greek. 90% of them were illiterate, but they experienced the liturgy. And that's what orthodoxy is all about. And unfortunately, the Western concept of understanding and knowing is infiltrating us. And we're losing the most important thing, the mystery. God is mystery. He's not to be understood, but through His grace we can experience Him. Those of you who are new here, that's what I call a sidebar. And I have a bunch of sidebars that are not written down here. That's why I like people to take it, because I say, "Ooh, I said that, I forgot about that one." Rejoice, bowl of manna, overflowing with life. Not like the manna in the wilderness, which they ate and died, but the manna, the capital M manna. Rejoice, laver overflowing with divine nectar. Rejoice, thou who hast shown us a passage from illness, not just illness of the body, but illness of the soul. There's a lot of people today running around with soul wounds. Many of them don't even know they have them. And so they go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and they take medication. But they're not dealing with the problem, only the symptoms. Soul wounds. Who talks about soul wounds? Only orthodoxy. We have a whole medical approach to the healing of the soul. And I wish we'd concentrate more on that in our seminaries, but that's another story. Rejoice, thou who did quench the fire of sickness. Rejoice, water of salvation. I mean, you'll agree with me, if we went through this ecos and took each one of those rejoices, we'd be here for a while. There's a lot of wonderful things in each one of them to discuss. Here's what the Synexation, that's a collection of things that tell us what certain feast days are. On Friday of the Renewal Week, we celebrate the consecration of the temple of our Most Holy Lady, the Mother of God, of the living, life-giving spring. Furthermore, we commemorate the supernatural miracles performed there by the Mother of God. Our Panagia is called the life-giving spring since she gave flesh to the Word of God, who, of course, is our life. The title life-giving spring, however, is in the Orthodox tradition, is kind of new, 9th century. St. Joseph the Hymnographer referred to the Mother of God in the 9th century with that term, life-giving spring. This holy church of Panagia was known as the life-giving spring of Balukli, which is a Turkish word for fish. You will see what that means later. It was outside the walls of Constantinople where there was a spring in which many miracles did occur and continue to take place as far as I know. There are two stories regarding the construction of this church. We're going to talk about the most prevalent one. It concerns the Emperor Leo the Thracian, whose 20-year reign began in the year 454. Originally, he's the one that originally built it. Leo was first a very simple soldier, a pious one, who, unlike most soldiers, was blessed with a lot of virtues. including something very important and something many of us lack today, a forgiving spirit. You want to know why you're in pain today? A lot of the problem is you don't forgive. And as long as you don't forgive, and by the grace of God you still have a conscience, you're not going to feel good. Because he died on the cross for you and me, so we would forgive. Forgiving spirit this man had. And one day he met a blind man outside the Golden Gate of Constantinople who asked him for a drink of water. He looked around in the general area and found nothing. There was a stream, but it was hidden by a multitude of trees. Now, he had such a compassionate heart. He felt such a pain for this man. He wanted to get him something to drink. He then immediately heard a voice. And let me just let you know here, the voice wasn't heard here. The voice was heard here. He heard a voice in his heart. And it was the Panagia who told him, King Leo. She referred to him as a king, even though at that time he was just a simple soldier. King Leo, come deeper into the woods, and after receiving this water in your hands, quench the thirst of the blind man and wash his eyes, and then you will know who I am that dwells in this place. Obediently, he immediately did this, and he found the spring. He put the water on the eyes, and the man received his sight. And then Leo was again informed in his heart that it was Panagia who did this. When he became emperor, he built the first church at the site of the miracle-working icon of fountain of Panagia. When that sacred church collapsed, it was rebuilt 100 years later by the Emperor Justinian, and then rebuilt again over 300 years later by the Emperor Basil the Macedonian. Each time the church became bigger and more beautiful. Now the next report we have regarding the church was around 700 years after the reign of the Emperor Basil. And I want to get a couple of the young kids. I see two right there. Come here, you girls. I need your help. Pass out an icon to each person here. I hope we have enough. One for you, don't sit there. You two right there. You you'll have a bigger one, so you can kind of walk around holding a bigger one too. An account dated in 1547 noted that the church no longer existed, but the holy water of the spring was continuing to perform miracles. We learned from another account after the fall of the imperial city that church was actually razed to the ground by the Turks. And they took the material for which the church was built to make a mosque. Nothing remained of the original church except for a small chapel almost completely buried in the ruins. Thankfully, as God would have it, in the early 19th century, Sultan Mahmud allowed the Greeks some religious freedom, and he granted the Patriarch Constantine II the permission to rebuild not merely a chapel at the spring, but another new church constructed on the foundation of the old one. Here's another sidebar. Foundations. That's the most important thing you can give your child. When your child is with you, that foundation. Because It's unfortunate that when they go to college, what you built on the top of that foundation is probably going to get hit bad or maybe even removed. And a new building might be put up, and that building is not going to be conducive to the Orthodox Church. But if there is a foundation that you gave that child, I tell us especially all the mothers, you keep praying, eventually they're going to come back. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I believe very strongly in my heart, if the foundation is there, the child will eventually return. So, they began building the church on September 14, 1833. They completed it on December 30th, 1834. And on the feast day of the presentation of Christ, a year later, the ecumenical patriarch and 12 other hierarchs and a lot of clergy and people consecrated that church. Unfortunately, the church got at it again pretty recently. In 1955, they desecrated and destroyed it. It's been restored, but not to the magnificence of the past. And there's another story now. I want you to kind of look at your icon. As you can see in the icon too, where we've got the Archangel Michael and Gabriel, and the Panagia is in the font with Christ. You see patriarch, you see a queen, you see two queens, and you see people getting healed, from the water. About 200 years later, what happened in this story is actually going to be in this icon. I'll show you where it is in a minute. There's a man from Greece. 4 men decided to go to that spring in the late 19th century because they heard of the miraculous power. Well, on the way to the spring, one of the men got very sick, and before he died, he made this statement. He said, "Please, don't bury me here. Don't throw me in the ocean. Take me to that spring. And then when you get there, pour," he was specific, 3 jars of water over me, then bury me in the forest near the spring. Well, of course, as soon as the water was poured on him, this man who had been dead now for about 15 days became alive, and he's in the icon. You see that the one at the very bottom, the man with the bowl, and he's about ready to pour it on the dead man. This is really what gave birth to this icon. So look what the power of the Panagia here. Man dead for longer than Lazarus, a lot longer. And they poured three jars of that water on him, and he came back to life. In some of the icons it has, this one doesn't have one, it was made in Russia. It has scrolls that say, "Rejoice thou who art the king's throne, rejoice thou who carrieth him who carries all." The one thing it doesn't show, of course, at least visibly on the icon, is she is also the life-giving fountain for the illnesses of the soul, caused by the passions with which the evil one attacks us every day. And I'm praying, beginning with all of us here, will daily seek more to reach out to our most beloved Panagia, so you and I too can receive our soul wounds to be healed from her life-giving spring. Now we're going to talk about the Iveron icon, and we're not going to talk a lot of detail. I want to start with a story I recently learned. Where is that OCA monastery? It starts with Seal something, City Cogna something.
Castrelli?
No.
Calistoga.
Yeah, Calistoga. Well, Maria Anagnos, are you here, Maria?
No.
Okay. Anyway, she drives Demetrios around a lot. And so as soon as she picked him up, he said, this time he didn't say hello to me. He said, we've got to go to Calistoga. And she said, I've never heard of that story. There's a Calistoga, but I've never heard of Calistoga. He said, well, that's what Panagia told me. He said, we've got to go to that particular place. I don't know why, but we've got to go there. So they go to the church, and then she keeps talking to me, and she says, we're very near, we're near that monastery in whatever that city is. Calistoga. Why don't we just go by there? And guess what? They were already outside with incense and bells. Panagia had told them that she was coming. That's how Panagia. To receive a more complete appreciation for the holiness of this icon, I feel we should begin with a brief account of its awesome history, the history of the original one. In the 9th century, during the reign of the heretical iconoclastic emperor Theophilos, there was a wealthy, pious woman who lived with her son in the city of Nicaea. Of course, that's where 2 ecumenical councils were held, number 1 and number 7. She was blessed to have a very large, wonderful icon of the Panagia with Christ as a child, of course, and she built a church very near her home in which to place the icon. Regretfully, a detachment of mercenary soldiers paid by that iconoclastic emperor to search for icons and to torture those who had them found the holy icon within the church she built and demanded a large sum of money, or that they were going to torture both her and her son. And here's how Panagia worked so many miracles. One of the soldiers took out his sword and thrust it into the icon, right into the cheek of Panagia. Immediately blood ran from that pierced location as if it were an open wound. This is the first of many miracles that occurred with this icon, and it so overwhelmed that particular soldier that he repented of this blasphemous act, later became a novice, and eventually ended up at the Aviron monastery. And he took the name Barbarian because of what he did. How many of you have been to that? Something to see, isn't it, John? I cannot imagine. I saw it too. It was just, you saw the blood, it's still there. The other soldiers left. They didn't know what to do at that point. So that gave her a little more time. And so she prayed with her son for hours to the Theotokos with tears, seeking guidance. Because they knew those soldiers would eventually return. And the Panagia told her to take the icon and throw it into the ocean. And so with much fear and reverence, before throwing in, she made this statement: Mistress of the world, thou as Mother of God, hast authority over all creatures. Pause here a minute. You say, only God. That's not true. Before Adam fell, he had authority over all creatures. So, especially the Mother of God, after becoming in a state of theos, since she's going to have, the authority over all creatures, thou canst save us from the wrath of the dishonorable emperor, and thine image from drowning. And she lowered it into the sea, but it stood erect. It didn't go down, and it was carried westward. Now, when she saw the strength of this, she's seen 2 miracles now, that blood coming out and how the icon was going across the sea like it was standing up. She began to get courage, and she wasn't worried about anymore herself. If the men came and killed her, she didn't care. but she wanted her son to go to Thessaloniki, and from there to go somewhere where there were monks, because that time there weren't any real established monasteries yet on Mount Athos, and tell them the story about what happened. And then over 2 centuries later, after the son shared the story to those Athonite monks, the holy icon makes its presence known again. One evening, several monks at the Aviron monastery saw at quite a distance a column of fire coming down from the heavens onto the sea, but that's all they could see was the column of fire. It continued for several days. And then they drew a little closer to the column, and they noticed that there was an icon on which the column of fire was setting. But when they tried to get closer to the icon, it would move back. And so the abbot of the monastery and all the brotherhood of monks began to pray to God, entreating him to tell, what can we do so we can get this icon closer? Now there was a hermit that was associated with Demetrios, the elder Gabriel. He spent a lot of times in the mountains in silent prayer. They say he was like an angel on the earth. And so the Mother of God came to the abbot and said, she came to Elder Gabriel and said, proclaim to the abbot and to the brotherhood that I desire to give them my icon for protection and assistance. Therefore, go into the sea, walk with faith over the waves, and then you shall know my love and my goodwill towards your monastery. Very shaken, of course, by such a divine encounter, the elder told the abbot, and the brotherhood went out to the water the next day, and he walked on those waves, and he brought that icon in. Well, of course, they're happy now they've got it, so they take it to the Catholicon, the major church in the monastery, and place it there. And the next morning, it was back at the beginning, at the opening of the monastery, at the door. And this went several times, and finally the Mother of God appeared again to the Elder Gabriel and said, tell the brotherhood not to tempt me. I don't desire to be protected by you. I desire to be your protectress, not only in this life, but in the next. Let all the monks who live virtuously on the mountain hope for the mercy of my Son and Lord and for God's goodwill. I ask him this for a gift, and let this be a sign to you. As long as you see my icon on the monastery, the grace and mercy of my Son will not be lacking among you. And there's a very strong story on Mount Athos. If that icon never leaves, then it's the end of the world. So if you ever hear it's there, it's not there anymore, start preparing very quick for the coming of the Lord. When the abbot was informed of this new vision, and then of course they put a little chapel there, and that's where the icon got the special name, Portaitisa, the keeper of the portal, the gatekeeper. Now, about 900 years have passed since that miraculous event occurred, although there were a number of recorded miracles that Carellas performed through that original icon during those many centuries. We're now going to concentrate on the Athonite copy, a painting of that icon original. Its first guardian, and it's given by our All Holy Lady of a miracle-working power, later to a small mounted print of the copy. Carellas chose a convert from Chile, Jose Munoz Cortez, to be the first guardian of the hand-painted copy of her Portaisia icon. One day at the age of 14, while he was walking to his Roman Catholic church in Santiago, he heard unusual chanting coming from a Russian Orthodox church nearby. It caused him to enter the church, and he never went back to the Catholic Church. He was catechized by the then Archbishop Leondi after 3 years of catechism. He was baptized into the Orthodox faith. And then he remained there and studied theology and iconography. And a couple of years later, he moved to Montreal, Canada. Once he got his college degree, Jose actually taught history of iconography at Montreal University. He wanted to be a monk, but at that time there were no monks, no monasteries in Canada. And so what did he do? He decides to go to Mount Athos in 1982. During a visit to one of the skeets that had an icon painting workshop, he had a real strong attachment to this one that they had painted of the original Portaiti, sir. And he asked him several times, can I please buy this icon? And they told him, he said, son, I'm sorry, this particular icon is not for sale. Well, he kept praying to the Mother of God, and because another thing we're lacking today, purity, because of his deep purity of soul, as he was leaving, the abbot chased him down and said, Panagia wants you to leave together. And he gave that icon of upstairs. Here's another example why I use the pronouns, the personal pronouns. The abbot treated the icon as if it were Panagia herself. She wants you to go with you. She wants, not it. Before he left to Mount Athos, though, a voice told him in his heart, you need to go to the original and touch this painted icon to the original. So he did that. And then he returned to Montreal and began reading an activist to the Mother of God every night before that icon, and he had a candle, a candili, an oil lamp lit all the time in front of that icon. On November 24th, 1982, he was wakened at 3 in the morning. Very strong fragrance coming from the icon. I think it was like Panagia was honoring the deep purity of his soul and body too. There's a Russian priest who's still alive today. He's the priest in D.C. He gives us a little look into the purity of the heart of Jose. He said, Jose rarely talked about his inner life, but all who ever communicated with him sensed the outstanding purity of this man. We can say without a shadow of doubt that he was truly an earthly liturgy of the Queen of, an earthly lily of the Queen of Heaven. He would always be modest at every church service, never trying to attract attention. He would quietly just stand behind everybody. And then the icon began to stream all the time, and people started hearing about the icon. And one day, a man came up to me and said, have you heard about this icon that streams myrrh? And I said, well, yeah, I've heard about it. The Guardian. He didn't say, yeah, I've got it, it's mine. I get to watch it myrrh every day. That article by Father Potapov also reveals to us how very difficult it was for him to be a guardian of this icon because it was miracle working. People don't realize when you get grace, the evil one doesn't want you to have it, so he's going to attack you a lot harder. And I don't mind sharing with you, some of you know that story. I had an opportunity to get grace once when I was a priest in a parish. I was sensing, and I was starting, it was a great vespers on Saturday night, and I was starting to sense the bishop's throne, and a figure started to form on the throne. And this thought came to my mind right away. If I see a saint on the throne, I'm going to pay for it by having to suffer more. And I lost it. I wasn't willing. I haven't had anything like that since. Maybe I'll never get it again, but it reminded me that stop thinking so much. Let your heart talk. Here's what he said that they found in Hosea's diary, from his diary. Lord Jesus Christ, who for our salvation came down from the heavens and was incarnate, who voluntarily suffered torture and crucifixion for our sins, give me the strength to endure my suffering, inflicted on me not by my enemies, but by my brothers, people who should have been with him. And then he said, "Oh Lord, do not impute sin to them." In that diary, he also recorded the exact day that he was going to leave this life and that he was going to be martyred. It's still unknown as to how the young murderers were able to convince Hosea to meet with them in a hotel room in Athens, Greece. But if they were hoping to find that icon, he didn't bring it with him. And to this day, we do not know where that icon is. I have a feeling if it shows up, it's going to be a real big sign for something very major. But only Panagia knows where it is right now. After the Blessed One's burial at Holy Trinity Cemetery in Jordanville, many people began to ask, will the icon ever return to us? Father Victor provided the answer in his recent article regarding the 35th anniversary of the appearance of the Montreal streaming icon of the Holy Theotokos and the 20th anniversary of his murder. Here's what he said: by the mercy of God, on October 6, 2007, the feast on the old calendar, that would be September 23rd on the old calendar, the conception of the glorious prophet and forerunner John. And that was also the year in which a unity was reestablished between the Robar Church and the Montreal Patriarchate. A very big year. An exact Myrrh streaming replica, 7x9 copy, made in Russia. Began to exhume myrrh. And I'm going to share just a little information about that for you. The guardian whom Panagia selected for this mounted print of the Montreal Divinity icon was Reader, who is now subdeacon Nectarius Yankson. He and his wife, Ia, that's her name, I-A, there is a Saint Ia, live in Honolulu. In 1997, on his name day, he received from his parish priest an exact copy of that Montreal myrrh streaming icon, the one, of course, that Jose was eventually murdered for. And it was blessed, by the way, from that icon. Then on October 6, 2007, both Nectarius and his wife were quite ill, unable to go to Great Vespers that night for the conception. And around 10:30 p.m., he was trying to do some work, and something strange. His cat walked in and started sniffing around because he couldn't smell anything right away. And then they noticed that they had this icon that they bought, an icon of the cross of Christ that he bought when he went to Mount Athos. It started murring, but they had more fragrance. And then when he finally put his hand on that copy of the Iviron icon, it was covered with myrrh. It was pouring out. So he took it to the church, And the priest allowed the people on the, I think it was on the feast day of the protection of the Mother of God, October the 1st, on their calendar would be October 13th on our calendar. Both of those icons were in the church and exuding lots of myrrh, and everybody was allowed to venerate them. Now, the one on the cross has since stopped exuding myrrh. Every now and then on a major feast day it might do it. That icon has never left Hawaii. But in June of 2008, the Hawaiian myrrh-streaming icon was recognized by the Rokar Church as worthy of veneration. And so Subdeacon Demetrios was charged by the church to take this icon around to churches in North America. Of all the jurisdictions, over 1,000 churches in North America have seen this icon. And it's been venerated by millions of people throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe, and the world. There's been requests for it to go to Russia, the Ukraine, Greece, Cyprus, South America, and the Holy Land, Europe, Romania, Mount Athos, and Serbia. At the request of Patriarch of Georgia, Elia II, that icon went there in 2014. 1 million people showed up to venerate that icon. 1 million, just a little teeny, 7 by 9. Many miracles were proclaimed to the patriarch by people who had received some of the myrrh. Through this humble icon, our most beloved Carellas has performed untold numbers of healings, including demonic possession, cancer, blindness and eye diseases, kidney diseases, paralysis, pancreatitis, chronic pain from various debilitating viruses. But based on my personal experience in the presence of this holy icon a few times, I believe strongly that more spiritual healings are occurring and will continue to occur when your heart is open. People not even of the Orthodox faith would come in front of that icon and stand and then begin to weep. It is my great joy to tell you tonight that each one of you will not only receive a blessed card of this myrrh-streaming icon, but something else special. When I knew I was going to be coming here, let me rephrase that. When I knew that I finally got the talks finished, I contacted the priest, and Father Andrew, I think is his name, in Honolulu, and I said, "Would you please send me 100 copies of the icon? I want to talk about it, and I'd like to pass it out." He was a real sweet man, and he said, "Father, I can't promise because this is a very difficult time. I want to just formally get started." And he said, "I'll just say I can try, but I can't guarantee it's going to get there." Well, when I got back from Washington, Texas, there was a box that was fragrant. The box was fragrant. And I'm thinking, what's going on? He brought me not only the icons, but a whole big piece of the cotton. And thanks to one of my spiritual children, each one of you are going to get one of those. So you're going to go home with Carellas. We'll bring this talk to a close with these spiritual words. His name, by the way, is Athanasios, not Andrew, I'm sorry. Here's what he said. "Wherever the holy icon goes, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and his Holy Mother abound." People have commented that just being in the presence of this icon, you feel such an abundance of love and joy. It is truly indescribable. We're so very blessed that God has shown his love towards us by allowing us a small forbearance of what the saints call the true aroma of sanctity. Only God knows the true meaning of this icon's appearance. Time will reveal all things. Yet one thing we do know is this: God loves us, and that is all that matters. Now, this is just 2 icons. We got 5 more to talk about. And tomorrow morning we're only going to talk about 1, so we're going to have about 4 in the second door. Anybody have any questions about anything we brought up tonight about those 2 icons, or any of my sidebars? Yes?
You mentioned about the fish in the bottle, please?
Oh, yes. In some of the icons, now this one here does not have it, unfortunately. In some of the icons, they would put some fish in the side, or even in the, oh wait, no, they're not in the water either. And I don't see any. Just because the name of the church, when it's in Mother of God, Life-Giving Spring of Belutsky, is where it means fish in Turkish. So, in some of the icons of the Life-Giving Spring, it does have, there's one, oh, I have fish in it. Or not.
I think there are some.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Isn't there a story behind the fish, though? Why they're...
I'm not sure. It might be.
Okay. Well, I heard when I was there, if it's the same spring, I was in Constantinople like in 2013. When the city fell in 1453, apparently the story goes that one of the messengers came through the tunnels and saw a monk at the monastery. He was frying fish. And he said, the city's been captured. And the monk said, well, it's easier for these fish to jump from the frying pan and back into the pond than it is for the city to be captured. And the fish jumped in to the spring. And that's why half the fish to this day are half fried and half not fried.
Oh, that's an interesting, and I'm going to put that in my next talk. I never heard that particular story. Did everybody hear him?
No.
Okay, come here with the microphone. Tell everybody.
I was in Constantinople in 2013. I had the blessing to be there, and the story goes, I might be doing justice to it, but when the city fell to the Turks in 1453, one of the messengers from the city came through the tunnel and spotted a monk who happened to be frying fish near the life-giving spring. And he told the monk the city's been captured by the Turks, and the monk said it's easier for these fish to jump out of this frying pan into the spring than for the city to be captured by the Turks. And the fish immediately jumped into the spring, having been half fried in the pan. So to this day, there are fish in that spring that look half fried and half not fried. In their scale.
That's awesome.
Let me tell a story.
I need to know what it is first.